Chapter 4, Levels of Telling the Truth. Levels of Telling the Truth. Oh, but I was so much older then. I'm younger than that now. Bob Dylan. Kathleen was 35 years old and head of her own interior decorating business. Hardworking, competent, pretty, and bright. A survivor. Her business was going great and she was getting rich. She came to me because in spite of the appearance of great success, she was hypersensitive, unable to have orgasms, suffering from insomnia, frenetic about work, and depressed about not having any intimate relationships with men. She came from a large Catholic family. She had been stuck in early adolescence for years and was destined to stay there for the remainder of her life, as many parochial school students do. Having learned from the nuns that the most important thing in life was to put on an act for parents and overseers and live your real life on the side. You have a public life and a secret life. Keep it that way. 8 years earlier, she had gotten an abortion, hiding it from her pro-life Catholic family. She had told no one about it except the man who impregnated her, and she had soon broken up with him. She had guarded her secret well through 2 years of individual psychotherapy with another therapist and many intensive groups where there had been opportunities for telling the truth. First, she told me. Then she told members of a therapy group. Then she told her friends. Then she told her sister. Each increment of revelation brought a degree of self-forgiveness and freedom. Each increment of lightening up about her dark secret helped quite a bit, but it wasn't enough. I encouraged her to finish with the matter by telling the truth to her parents. She resisted for some time, and finally I told her she had either to do it or get out of therapy. She agreed to tell them. She made several trips home with the intention of having a completely honest conversation with her folks. But she would get scared and come back without having spoken a word. After many failed attempts, she finally told her parents about the abortion. Because of the number of times she had gone home and retreated without telling, the first thing her father said when she finally came out with it was, "Oh, thank God," because he and her mother had already secretly concluded that Kathleen probably had a terminal disease she couldn't bring herself to tell them about. After the topic was broached and a discussion ensued about why Kathleen and all the other children lied to them all of the time, the brother, who was in town, was called over, and the family had quite a long discussion about who everyone was, about lying, and about the games the kids had played with the parents and the secrets they had kept among themselves. This conversation with her family was a breakthrough in her psychotherapy. Kathleen no longer has asthma. A few months after that trip home, she began living with a man to whom she is now married. She has orgasms almost every time they have sex. She can sleep. She runs her business and takes time off as she likes. She is even more successful, but not miserable anymore. She has accomplished the first level of telling the truth. Kathleen stepped out from behind her good daughter role, which she had maintained by hiding and lying all of the time, risked her relationship with her parents for the sake of revealing who she really was, and ended up transforming not only her own way of being in the world, but that of her whole family. Roles like clothing we learn to put on to protect ourselves from the cold. Roles are like clothing we learn to put on to protect ourselves from the cold. When we take off the roles we have been hiding behind, the naked being we are stands there, vulnerable and defenseless. The being we are, as distinct from the roles we've been playing, doesn't need the defensive weapons we invented to scare the enemy away. Those other people out there are naked under their roles too. They are playing possum, or creating a stink, or baring their fangs and growling, or signaling anger and threatening like a chimp, or running like a rabbit. Their roles were developed for the sake of survival, just as our roles were. The difference between our survival tactics and those of animals is that theirs are necessary for the continuation of their physical existence, and ours are not. But we act as though ours are. We conceal ourselves because we fear that the pain accompanying the act of self-disclosure will literally destroy us or fundamentally damage our being in some horrible way, rendering us maimed and dysfunctional. In addition, we fear we may destroy others with our truth-telling. Kathleen recoiled for years from what she saw as the utterly destructive power of her unleashed secret. It would, she thought, kill her parents and herself to have told it. But telling the truth kills nothing but false roles, images, interpretations, and lies, as Kathleen discovered. It only kills those deceits which we had kept alive through strategic self-concealment. Kathleen, her false image, did not survive her revelation. But Kathleen did. Through telling the truth, she revealed herself, and thus delivered herself and her family into a new and more powerful relationship, achieved through the death of the old lying relationship. The ability to, quote, get naked in front of other people who are still in their roles, as Kathleen did, is important. Coming out from behind our roles permits us to look behind the roles of others, because we can see more clearly the threat of other people posing in their roles fades. Once we come out from behind our pose, what used to scare us about other people doesn't scare us anymore. Coming off it, dropping the roles we thought we needed for protection, turns out to be not only safe, but a place of power. Kathleen got less scared of other people, particularly men. Intimacy is a power grown into after adolescence. The person capable of intimacy, that is, the person capable of telling the truth, still has roles to play, but is no longer trapped by them. The integrated person behind the role no longer has anything to hide, and can relate freely to the being he knows is hidden behind the roles others are playing. The person is then in charge, rather than the role. I differentiate these three phases or levels of truth-telling. These levels may occur successively or simultaneously, or a person may master one or two levels and retreat from the next. Often people retreat after encountering a frightening sense of freedom afforded by a breakthrough at a new level. Sometimes they try again later, sometimes not. The three levels are revealing the facts, honestly expressing current feelings and thoughts, and finally, exposing the fiction you have devised to represent yourself and your history. Level 1. Revealing the facts. Kathleen is an example of level 1 of telling the truth. The first level of telling the truth is to reveal the facts. It is a matter of clearing up lies from the past and the false presentation of self being maintained through withholding. We all lie casually and habitually and are largely unconscious about it. We all learn to lie innocently, as we learn the ways of being grown up and how to impress our friends. We have to develop and organize the lies we pretend to be and complete that job and feel okay about it before we can give up that identity. We have to strut and pose and try on lots of roles and tell a lot of lies and do a good job of it before giving it up. But if we continue to grow, we will give the roles up. Eventually, we can joke about what used to be serious work in learning how to represent ourselves to others. That ability to joke about who we are comes only after we have developed the basic identity, the fundamental lie we think we are. Then, despite all that work, we have to give up our attachment to that identity. If we don't, we'll never be free from its restrictions. Here is another way of saying it. We have to go through adolescence and develop an identity and answer the question, who am I? Having established that identity, We have to give up our attachment to it and remember who we were at the beginning before we developed that identity, who we still are, the being from back in the womb, and who we have come to know ourselves as, the identity we have developed. And they have to be integrated. Then, when we relate to other people, we can come from a consciousness of our whole being and the being of others, and have a personality rather than be had by our personality. The first level of this process is revealing deceptions and withholds. You have been maintaining an image in the eyes of others to sell yourself to them in a certain way. Now you have to untell those lies. If you never have told your mother and father that you stole the car at 1 a.m. to visit your boyfriend when you were 16, go tell them and face the consequences, even if you are 40. It must be done. Not everyone is up to it. Take, for example, Linda, who illustrates a retreat from this first level of telling the truth. Linda is a 37-year-old woman raised in the Midwest in a middle-class Protestant home. All of her life, the point of living has been to be good and not bad, to score points, to be a star in high school and college, to make A's, and to be well thought of. She was a cheerleader and a member of all the important clubs in high school and college. She is very successful and makes a lot of money and is highly regarded in her profession. She is at the end of her second marriage. She has had affairs and gotten caught by her husbands in both cases, and the eventual result has been one divorce and one imminent divorce. She says that as far as her father, whom she adores, is concerned, she is still a virgin. She wouldn't dream of telling him of the 3 furtive one-night stands she had with virtual strangers, and the one affair that was more than a one-night stand that occurred before her first divorce. She didn't even tell her second husband about that. Neither would she dream of telling Daddy about the 3 one-night stands and 2 long-term affairs she has had since about 2 years after her second marriage began, including the one in which her husband caught her. She had a whole stack of compiled secrets and unfinished business with her father, her first husband, and her current husband. With my encouragement, she told her husband everything about all her affairs, including the ones since they were married. However, when he didn't get over the news within a month, she started withholding from him again about conversations and meetings she was having with her current male friend. After all, since she doesn't have sex with her friend anymore, there is no need to bring it up, right? She and her husband don't have sex anymore. She is repulsed by the idea of sex with her husband, but she doesn't want to tell him that because it might hurt his feelings, and she sees no need to do that again. She does meet and have a drink now and then with her former lover and doesn't tell her husband. She feels virtuous for not having sex with her former lover when she talks to him and for trying to work out her marriage. She can't understand why in the world I suggest that she clean up her act with her husband again and go and tell her parents everything. It would only hurt and disappoint her father, who is old now and wouldn't understand. She admits that since she told her husband about her previous secret sex life, they have had the best conversations they have ever had, but since he still seems to be deciding to divorce her, she is not sure she believes in this telling the truth stuff. Linda has plenty of reasons and plenty of social support from her friends to continue to gossip with them and withhold from her husband, and not tell her folks about her life, and for God's sake to quit seeing that ridiculous psychologist who is obviously crazy. She is quite pretty and takes good care of her body, even though she suffers from pain caused by being so uptight. She had twice been misdiagnosed as having arthritis before coming to see me, but had flunked the blood tests taken to confirm the diagnosis and confounded several doctors' attempts to figure out what caused her so much pain. She saw no relationship whatsoever between her withholding at the social level and holding back at the physical level to such a degree that all of her joints ached. She did notice, however, that when she cleaned up her withholds from her husband and risked her phony marriage, her pain went away. She got stuck between the rock of going back to the controlled misery of her previous arrangement and salvaging her marriage, and the hard place of recreating a new marriage based on telling the truth. Worse yet, after starting to hide again from her husband, the damned pains started coming back. My suggestion that she go tell her father the whole story just added to her stress, and she started considering finding a more understanding therapist. Because she is so pretty, there are lots of other men out there who are much more understanding than I am anyway, particularly since being understanding is a good way to get laid. From her point of view, she has tried telling the truth at one level, the facts, and it didn't work because her husband got mad and didn't get over it, so she is not going to make the same mistake with her father or her husband again. When she reached this conclusion, I suggested that she quit therapy with me. She didn't want to. I set the condition that she tell the truth to her husband and parents at this first level or get out. She got out, still suffering from the stress and physical pain that had brought her to me. I recommend that people tell the truth because all stress is caused by lying. Some people are too scared to follow through, and others temporarily tell the truth and then go back to lying. If I attempt to do therapy with people who are not willing to take the risk of telling the truth, I am ripping them off. I put up with their withholding and lying for a while and support them to experiment enough to see how it works. About 1 out of 6 people leave therapy with me by quitting or getting kicked out. Sometimes kicking someone out of therapy is an effective therapeutic intervention. When I suggest that people clean up their act at the first level and tell their parents, spouses, and friends their long withheld secrets, they think that's the hardest part. It's not. It is a necessary but not sufficient part of telling the truth. Usually, after resisting for a time and being afraid of the consequences and making a few false starts, people go ahead and come forth with a big withhold to a parent or spouse. Most of the time, parents and siblings can hardly remember or remember differently the big trauma and its meaning, or they are not as shocked or righteously indignant or offended or hurt as expected. Usually spouses come forth with withholds of their own and really muddy the water. What happens most is that the anticipated catastrophe doesn't show up, and the client, although greatly relieved, is also a little disappointed. There is a sense of freedom, a gap, a wider sense of being in charge of life, but also a feeling of being nonplussed, like one would feel after having lost a job of some kind. The new breathing space that is opened up from this first level work is wonderful, and the client loves me and thinks I am greater than Socrates. Usually I give people a little rest at this place, and we celebrate their newly renewed relationships. Often I have met the parent or spouse who is the main guarded against and lied to significant other. Often, in fact, the secrets are revealed in my office and with the aid of my coaching. Usually, instead of being tragic, these sessions are fun. The first level of truth-telling leads to the first level of liberation. You tell the facts from the past that have been withheld. You no longer have to be paranoid about being found out, and you get back to the energy that was being used up for years to hide the facts. But telling the truth doesn't end with the facts. Level 2, honesty about current thoughts and feelings.